today I want to talk to you about the Château Laurier extension and why that decision is a metaphor for everything that is going wrong with this country right now. That extension personifies why process in this country trumps outcomes. Now let me explain. The Château Laurier is one of the most historic buildings in the country. It was given a national designation in 1980 as an historic site. It was built between 1909 and 1915. It was commissioned to be built by a fellow named Charles Melville Hayes, who was the president of the Grand Trunk Railway, the company that built the rail lines across Canada that really unified our country physically from coast to coast. Mr. Hayes had this vision to build the Château Laurier in tandem with the building of the Parliament buildings and the train station across the street. It was completed in 1915. Unfortunately, Mr. Hayes didn't make the induction ceremony to open it because he was on the Titanic, which sunk, and he died. So they delayed it until June of that year. The Château Laurier, of course, was named after one of our most famous prime ministers, Sir Henry Charles Wilfrid Laurier, hence the reason why we have Wilfrids in the front of the hotel. So it's a very, very, very historic building. It's got Tiffany windows, Belgian marble floors that were imported. We've got an Art Deco style pool that was built in 1930. An addition to the hotel was also built in 1929. The exterior part, which had a French design, in the interior part, an English design to represent the duality of our nation, the French and the English. Now there's another historical connection to the hotel, and that involves the Canadian military. The 1st Canadian Machine Gun Brigade was enrolled at the Château Laurier at the beginning of the war in 1914. A lot of those soldiers went on to fight and die at Vimy Ridge. In 1924, the CBC moved into the hotels and would stay there for 8 decades, reporting news from across Canada and around the world. Famous photographer Joseph Karsh lived in the hotel. R.B. Bennett, the Prime Minister from 1930 to 1935 during the Depression, lived in the hotel. John Turner, Brian Mulroney, Joe Clark, Diefenbaker, Louis Saint-Laurent, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, all went to the hotel regularly for visits, for lunches, for dinners, for galas. In fact, in 1980, Pierre Trudeau said, "Welcome to the 1980s, Canada," as he won a majority government in the 1980 election. This hotel is part of the fabric of Canada. I don't think the issue about the contextual history of the Château Laurier is at dispute, that it's a national historic site. If we look at the history of the renovations to the hotel, as I've said, there were renovations done in 1929, in 1930, in the 1980s. They built the beautiful Zoe's with a glass front on the hotel that everybody loved. And remember, thousands of events have been held at this hotel. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families over the years have had weddings at the hotel. It's really ingrained into the local community. So how do we get from that to the point we're at today? Well, in 2013, this historic hotel was sold to Largo Investments. This is owned by a couple of billionaire brothers out of Vancouver, and they were also a company that was caught up in the Panama tax scandal. Well, that's an entirely other thing, but there's an ethics issue there for a company that's caught up in a tax scandal. This company is not attached to the community in Ottawa in any way. They requested a renovation and it went to City Council. Now, why a bunch of local, obtuse Ottawa City Councillors get to be the deciders in this is beyond the pale, especially when it's a national historic site. But given the fact that we've had other renovations in the past, you would think that, well, maybe they'll get it right. They didn't get it right. Now, this is the 5th time they got it wrong. They allowed for an architectural design that was a disaster. It looks like an air filter. Some people have even described it as it looking like part of Trump's wall. I mean, it's beyond ugly. It's but ugly. Now, here's the shocking thing. Local councillor Alan Hughley went on CFRA News in June and said, basically, "I'm a technical guy, we all know it's ugly, but we followed the process, so we have to go ahead." That's from an elected official. So we have this local obtuse council whose obsession with process leaves us with this horrible Château Laurier redesign. Renovation blight in the middle of our capital that is arguably going to ruin Majors Hill Park, and they vote in favor of it despite acknowledging it's ugly. A week after Mr. Hughley and the councillors voted for the Château Laurier extension, they all had a big freak out at City Council about a bench that had been placed on the new LRT line in Ottawa at the Herdman Station. Now this bench, and you can see a photo of it here, was placed between the entranceway and some landscaping. Obviously, some numbskull was told to put a bench at the station, and not being an architect or a landscape designer, he just decided to put the bench half on the land and half in the garden. He doesn't care that half the bench is in the garden because, that's not his job. Schubli was irate about this, and he actually said, "I'm not here to give excuses for stupidity," when he was asked about it as a counselor. "I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Who did this?" Really? This coming from the same counselor that just did a nuclear version of this by allowing this extension at the Château Laurier. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but if Mr. Schubli wants to spend some time getting to the bottom of why the bench is in a place it shouldn't be, maybe he should spend some more time figuring out how he allowed the most butt-ugly extension in the world to be attached to the Château Laurier. So I think he's right. We have to talk about what they're handing over to us and what's stupid and what isn't. We need to focus on why we are so focused on process over outcomes. Here's the problem. We elect our counselors to act in our interest. We elect them to look at the big picture. And whether it's a bench at Herdman Station or an air conditioning type extension, the point is you're getting the same outcome. We elect these people to get positive outcomes. Process is how you get there, but process should not trump the outcomes. And that's what we need to fix.